بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, we welcome you all to this discussion. We hope that it will be very interesting, and we hope to hear a lot of feedback and good questions from the audience as well. My name is Abdullah. I'm very lucky and blessed to be the current president of the Islamic Society at Fصلت University, and I am equally blessed to have been able to work in cooperation with a local organization here at Loughborough called Al-Hira, and we have organized this event in cooperation with them. And without further ado, I would like to present the Amir of Al-Hira, Ridwan Chaudhry, and he will be the host and the chair of this event today. Thank you.
Dear friends, respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to this much anticipated event entitled Islam or Atheism, the Rational Conclusion. To my fellow Muslim brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting words of paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May the peace, mercy and blessings of Allah be upon all of you. To begin, I would like to call Brother Muhammad Muhsin to recite a few verses from the glorious Quran with translations.
May the peace, mercy, and blessing of Allah be upon all of you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم. The English translation of Surah Al-Rahman, which means the most gracious, chapter 55, verses 17 to 25. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. He is the Lord of the two east, places of sunrise during early summer and early winter, and the Lord of the two west, places of sunset during early summer and early winter. Then which of the blessings of your Lord will you deny? He has let loose the two seas, the salt and fresh water meeting together. Between them is a barrier which none of them can transgress. Then which of the blessings of your Lord will you deny? Out of them both come out pearl and coral. Then which of the blessings of your Lord will you deny? And his are the ships going and coming in the seas like mountains. Then which of the blessings of your Lord will you deny? Thank you for listening.
Jazakallah khair for that beautiful recitation. Today, we seem to find ourselves in a world becoming increasingly disenchanted and devoid of spirituality. Humankind has reached levels of scientific and technological advancement that have never before been witnessed. Yet, arguably, we seem to find ourselves further away from an ideological utopia once dreamt of by the founding fathers of our modern society. We Muslims would like to present what we believe to be perhaps the greatest paradox of our times. Science and rationality, once the antithetical and avowed enemy of religion, is today bringing into light itself as one of the greatest proponents of Islam. We hope that through our guest speaker, we are able to relay this to our audience. The structure of today's session will consist of the delivery of a 40-minute lecture, followed by another 40 minutes of question and answers. This may be subject to change. A brief introduction to our speaker. Our guest speaker today is Brother Hamza Andreas Tzortzis. Brother Hamza is an international public speaker of Islam, a writer, lecturer, and an intellectual activist. He is particularly interested in Islam, politics, Western and Islamic philosophy. Brother Hamza has debated prominent lecturers and intellectuals. He has delivered presentations across the world on various topics. Brother Hamza is a regular speaker at university campuses and has also traveled the world extensively to deliver lectures, most notably the USA, Malaysia, and Lebanon. He has authored a number of Islamic publications, including the popular website www.theinimitablequran.com, as well as serializing a number of articles on his popular blog. He has also led a major piece of research in non-Muslim perception of Islam through Ayra. Brother Hamza is one of the main initiators of the contemporary emergence of Muslim public debaters and speakers using Western and Islamic philosophy to defend and explain Islam. Currently, he is a senior researcher and lecturer for Ayra, the Islamic Education and Research Academy. Brother Hamza was born in London on 21st September 1980. He is married with 2 children. His parents are Greek migrants who settled in the UK in the 1970s. He was brought up in the London borough of Hackney and attended school and college in the area. Brother Hamza went on to study psychology at the University of Westminster, and he is currently studying Western and Islamic philosophy. Before we begin, I would like to remind our audience to please ensure that mobile phones are either switched off or left on silent. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome our guest speaker to the podium, Brother Hamza.
Okay, I'm going to start as Muslims do in the name of God. In alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Brothers, sisters, and friends, I greet you with the warmest Islamic greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For those who do not know what that means, it means may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. Brothers, sisters, and friends, today is a very important discussion. It is a paramount discussion. It's a discussion of paramount importance. Its significance is actually something that we take for granted, whichever side we belong on the ideological or philosophical spectrum. Whether we adopt an atheist worldview, whether we're agnostic, whether religious, whether we're Islamic, or whatever the case may be. It is a very important topic, because from ideas you get action. Because the ideas that we adopt and we internalize within each other, we actually manifest them, we bring them about into the real world. So for example, if someone's going to think of evil thoughts every day, some point in his life, he's going to have an evil action. This is the normal type of approach to Western psychological thinking. It's like the cognitive behavioral approach. You have crazy ideas, you're going to end up having crazy behaviors. Okay? So that explains us Muslims, right? I'm only kidding. Before I formally start into the presentation, I really want everyone to switch off their radio. I'm hearing lots of radios here. Can anyone hear the radios? Well, actually it's your internal radio. because I want you guys to listen properly, which basically means listening with the intent to understand. Think about this. Listening with the intent to understand what I'm saying. Because usually when we speak with someone, when we have a dialogue, when we have a discussion, when we have a debate, we're not really listening. We have what I call the shotgun approach, which is, he's talking. I already have my answer, bam. That's the reality, and you can actually see it with people sometimes. The eyes are not looking at you, looking through you, and then thinking about their answer. We don't want this. I want us to connect with each other as human beings. That's very important. Let's connect as human beings, and one way of doing that is switching off that internal radio. What's that internal radio? It's basically thinking, you listen to what I'm saying, and then you're thinking, oh, he looks much slimmer on YouTube. Oh, I don't believe he's Greek, he looks Pakistani. Yeah, all these things. He thinks he sounds too clever. Yeah, he only went to Westminster University. Yeah, stuff like that. So we basically should stop superimposing our experience and judgments on other people. And in doing that, you will be able to connect with each other in a far amazing way. So let's switch off that radio. Okay, good. Now, the discussion is Islam or atheism, the rational conclusion. So I'm going to approach this in a rational way. But we first have to discuss, what do we mean by rational? Let me give you a crude example, and then let me give you a detailed example. To highlight what I mean by rational, I want you to imagine that you are in your living room, and it's 12 o'clock midnight, okay? You're in your living room, and it's 12 o'clock midnight. And then you hear knocking on the door. And you quickly run to the door, not expecting anybody. You look through your spyglass, and you see a man in his red underpants. And then you're like, what do you want, mate? And he goes, hello, I'm from British Gas, I'm here to check your gas meter. How would you respond? Would you let him in? No, thank God. Okay, you wouldn't let him in. Why? Because using your previous experience, you know British Gas does not adopt that type of uniform policy. Even if you give them benefit of the doubt, you'll be calling British Gas and saying, do you really dress like that at 12 o'clock at midnight? Do you have guys coming at this time? Is it part of your policy? You'll be start applying your common sense, your previous experience on the particular reality, which is a man in his red underpants. You would not let him in. And that's the reality of today's discussion. We're going to use our previous experience, our rational thinking, common sense, and our logic in order to form conclusions about man life and the whole universe. This is why it is important to start with understanding what we mean by rational thinking in the first place. Let me give you a little bit more of a deeper example of a deeper discussion. I'm going to start with an approach that I'm going to try and show that atheism is actually irrational. Think about it, it's a bold claim, slightly arrogant, but you're going to understand what I'm trying to say later. Technically, atheism isn't an irrational thesis. It's an irrational worldview. It's irrational. Do you know why? Because it doesn't really use rational thinking. Now, when we go to Western philosophy, for example, there were two key concepts. And these key concepts were rationalism and empiricism. There was a battleground with these two key ideas. Now, the rationalists, what they used to believe in a concept called a priori. You don't have to know this, but that basically means that we have knowledge independent of experience. We have ideas, we have concepts, we have knowledge that we don't need to use the real world to justify. For example, how do we know the number one is number one? That was the battleground between the rationalists and the empiricists. Because the rationalists believe that you could have knowledge independent of experience. Whereas the empiricists, they say no. All knowledge is dependent on experience. This is why they had the concept called a posteriori. Okay? Which basically means that knowledge we attain has to be dependent on experience. This is where the scientism and naturalism developed from this type of philosophy, that we gain knowledge from experience. Whereas the rationalists said, no, that may be true in some cases, but we have some knowledge that we gain independent from experience. For example, the Western philosopher Immanuel Kant, he would use the example of causality. See, empiricists would say, no, you need to experience causality in the real world to understand that it exists, it's part of knowledge. But what the rationalists said, no, you don't. And they gave an amazing example. And let me give it to you so you can understand. To prove causality is real, it exists, all you need to do is show the following example. And you don't have to use the real world to justify this. It's an internal thing. The a priori I was talking about. Knowledge independent of experience. For example, I could look at the gentleman in the front row, then I go to look at the gentleman with the glasses in the middle row, then I could go all the way back and look at the wall. I'm ordering my perceptions. Gentleman, gentleman, green wall. Okay? But if the cameraman was to run towards me, all I could see is his front first before he runs away and I see his back. So what is it that allows me to understand that I can order my perceptions or not? In the first scenario, I can order my perceptions. In the second scenario, I have no choice. All I can see is his front first before I see his back because he's running towards me. If we didn't have the internal, innate concept of causality, I would never be able to understand when and what perceptions I can order myself. If causality wasn't an internal idea, independent from experience, I could never know that I'm ordering my experiences. Experiences would just be an experience plus an experience plus an experience without any meaning. The reason I know that I could see his front first before I see his back, and the reason I know I can order my perceptions in the other scenario, is because of the internal concept of causality. So we can justify that everything you gain with regards to knowledge is not always dependent on experience. This is something that's very important to grasp, because it would make us understand the whole debate between atheism and the rationalist philosophers within a religious paradigm, within a religious tradition. So let's end with the philosophy because it's quite boring and it's philosophical mumbo jumbo. Okay? So let's talk about some real stuff. So using rationalism or rational thinking, which means including experience and some of the innate ideas that we hold as human beings, how can we justify that Islam is more of a rational conclusion? Well, I'm going to use three aspects, and these three things, I call them the intellectual pillars of the Islamic worldview. The first intellectual pillar, if you like, is God's existence, okay? God's existence. The second is revelation, okay? And the third is prophethood. Now, Muslims would humbly argue that if you could find good reasons using rational thinking to support each and every intellectual pillar, then the house of Islam stands firm. Then we have good reasons to believe in Islam. This is why it's important to have this discussion, because Muslims don't do things because internally they like them. Muslims don't do things because, oh, that sounds like a great idea. For example, to cover my hair in the heat, or to grow a really, really long beard in a liberal society, or many other things that the Western tradition or people from a Western background will find quite bizarre. And I totally understand this because I came from a Greek background. I was brought up as a humanist. So I really understand, and I really try to empathize with the other perspective. And empathy is very important. It means to feel with other people. Not feel against them, feel with them. So to try and sit in their shoes and walk a few inches. That's what empathy is all about. So I do understand that some of these things can be quite bizarre from a social perspective. So Muslims don't do these things because intuitively they like them, or they think it's a great thing, or they have masses of wisdom behind them. Essentially, Muslims do things is because God said so. Simple as that. Muslims do things because God said so. And there is a logic behind this, and this logic is very strong. And listen to this very carefully. 1. By definition, God is all-knowing, all-wise. Number 2, human beings are not. Number 3, and this is the conclusion, therefore human beings should refer to God. This is why sometimes when I talk to various religious people, I say to them, if God told you to wear a leather jacket on Fridays and ice skate on Tuesdays, you'd be wearing a leather jacket on Fridays and ice skating on Tuesdays. Because God said so. And obviously by definition, his intellect, inverted commas, his mind, whatever you want to call it, is far greater and infinite compared to finite human beings. Now, some people say, well that's just crazy, that's just balderdash, it doesn't make any sense. What it does, if we could prove this, if we could prove a God does exist, and if we could prove that he has given us a revelation, and if we could show good reasons to believe that there was a prophet, then actually it justifies our logic that we do things because God said so. You just can't deny this. So this is why we talk about the intellectual pillars of Islam. So let's go straight to God's existence. Now, first and foremost, we all have asked the question, why are we here? What are we doing? We're this huge cosmos, this huge universe. We're a speck of sand, a speck of dust in this vast ocean of the universal desert, if you like. We're nothing. This is why, many astronauts who go up and see the Earth and they feel quite depressed thinking, we're insignificant. So what's this all about? Why is the universe the way that it is? And this question is very important. In the Quran, which is the book of the Muslims, actually poses such questions. For example, it says, do you think you were created out of nothing? Were you the creator? Did you create the heavens and the earth? It gives us a type of understanding that we should question man, life, and the universe. We should question the whole universe and its existence. Even in Western philosophy we have this. The famous German polymath, Leibniz, he said the first question that must be asked and answered is, why does something exist rather than nothing? In response to this, the atheist originally said, for example, Bertrand Russell on a radio program, he said the universe is just there. It's a brute fact. Get over it. That's it. We are just a miscarriage of nature. We're just here. No reason, no reality. It's a brute fact. No beginning, no end. But if we really think about this and use rational thinking, can the universe really have no beginning, no end? Can the universe have no beginning, no end? Can the universe be eternal? Of course it can't. Because that would mean, brothers and sisters, that the history of the universe is infinite. It would mean the history of the universe is forever. But can that really be the case? Can we have an infinite number of anything in the real world? Let me give you some examples so you understand this. Say we have an infinite number of potatoes in this room. An infinite number, a forever amount of potatoes in this room. If I take 5 potatoes away, how many potatoes do we have left? Who could answer this? Infinite. And I hear another gentleman say, infinite minus 5. So you have 2 options. It's still infinite, or it's infinite minus 5. Whatever the case may be, practically, there should be less than infinite. But when we start counting, there is no less than infinite, because we started from infinity, we've taken away 5, and what does that really mean? It leads to absurdities. This is why the concept of the infinite in the real world only exists in mathematics. It doesn't exist in the real world. Let me give you another example. Say we had a 100 David Beckhams in this room. Yeah? We had 100 David Beckhams in this room, and at every possible moment, we add another David Beckham. To many people's delight, obviously, yeah? So we have David Beckham 101, David Beckham 102, David Beckham 1,000,001, David Beckham 2,000,001, and that goes on forever and ever and ever. Are we ever going to reach an amount of David Beckhams that we can say is an infinite amount of David Beckhams? Why? Because, as my dad said when we were having coffee, he said, what about infinity plus 1? What he was trying to say to me was, you could always add another number, practically. So infinity is never actualized. So how can we even claim this about the universe? How can we claim that the universe has an infinite history? How can we claim the universe has a forever history? Because historical events are real. They're not just ideas. So how can that be forever? It can't. So from this very basic idea, we know the universe cannot have an infinite history. Therefore, it must have a beginning in time. Now you may think again this is philosophical mumbo jumbo. I agree. So let's see and understand that this is confirmed by scientists. This is confirmed by astrophysical evidence, by the physicists. Put your hand up who's heard of the Big Bang. Good. And I usually make the same joke, which says that it's not that thing that happens after too many curries. And I get the same laugh. Good. Well, the Big Bang Theory, also known as the hot standard model, there's variations of this model, but let's talk about the hot standard model. It basically tells us that the universe emerged from a point called singularity. This is what the cosmologists call, they call it singularity. And from this singularity, they're saying time and space were created. Time and space were created, and all matter in the universe. For example, we can refer to scientists like Beatrice M. Tinley and Schramm and many others. They say that from this singularity, the whole universe started to emerge. Okay? So they're saying that the universe began at a point in time. This is the reality. T is equal to 0, and there's the universe. The universe began at a point in time. So what can we conclude from here, brothers, sisters, and friends? What we conclude is an argument in the following summary. Number 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Whatever begins to exist, brothers and sisters, has a cause. For example, a noise in the room. For example, the pyramids in Egypt. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Number 2, the universe began to exist. And we've justified this using scientific and philosophical evidence. Number 3, therefore, the universe has a cause. So we can justify that there's a cause for the universe. There is a cause for the entire universe. But I would say, does that mean it's God? Does that mean that cause is God? No, that's a leap of faith. It's not a rational conclusion. All we know is that there's just a cause for the universe. It could be anything. But if we keep to the rational way of thinking, we will come to the following striking conclusions. If this cause of the universe actually brought into effect the universe itself, then it must be all-powerful. Because it brought into existence the entire cosmos. So it's all-powerful. Also, if this cause brought into effect the whole universe, then it must be eternal. Why must it be eternal? Why must it be eternal? Why must the universe be mortal, non-eternal, and the cause of the universe must be eternal? Well, it's very simple. It's by necessity. Because if we say, well, what caused the cause of the universe, then what stops us from saying, well, what caused that cause, the universe? then we could continue saying, well, what caused that cause? That caused that cause, that caused that particular cause, that caused that cause, that caused the universe. Wait a minute, well, let's carry on. What caused that cause? That caused that cause, that caused that cause, that caused that cause, that caused that cause. You know, it's starting to get to a beat now. We're rapping, yeah? If that goes on forever, are we ever going to have the universe? No, we're not. It has to be uncaused by necessity. Let me give you another example for you to appreciate. Say I want to throw this pen at... I'm assuming she's a police lady, yeah? We have CIA and MI5 in the room, okay? That's a typical thing that happens when you have Islamist kind of conversations, okay? It's alright. We love you guys, yeah? Say I want to throw the pen at the lady, right? But before I throw the pen, I have to ask Rizwan, Osama bin Laden's brother, for permission to throw the pen. He says, well, I can't give you permission because he has to ask the brother next to him. And if that goes on forever, am I going to throw the pen at the copper? No! That would never happen. Similarly, if we say there's an infinite number of causes for the universe, we will never have the universe. Therefore, by necessity, the cause for the universe must be eternal, meaning no beginning, no end, uncaused. Also, this cause for the whole universe must be one. It must be a single cause. Why am I saying this? Well, there's a principle in science and philosophy called Occam's razor. Okay? And Occam's razor basically says, do not multiply causes, do not multiply entities beyond necessity. Because it's irrational. Or we know that there is a knocking on the door. You're not going to say now, you know what? There's 3,252 million people behind the door. No, it's not in line with that principle. We have to shave away, razor off, shave away all unnecessary causes or unnecessary explanations. So the best explanation in this context is that this cause must be one. Because do we have any evidence that it's 2, or that it's 3, or that it's 4? We don't. So we go to the most simplest and rational explanation is that this cause is one. Also, this cause, brothers and sisters, must be immaterial because it brought into existence the sum of all material, which is the universe. And finally, this cause, brothers and sisters, must have a will, which means it can interact with personal agents like humans in the universe. Now, why must it have a will? Well, if it's eternal, and it brought into existence a finite effect like the universe, what does it mean? It means it must have chosen the universe to come to existence. And choice indicates it has a will. And having a will means you can have a personal relationship with living beings in the universe. So what have we just done? We have just concluded rationally what the Quran, the book of the Muslims, concluded 1400 years ago. As the Quran says in a very eloquent way, in the 112th chapter, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Say, He is God, the one, the unique, the eternal. He begets not, nor was He begotten. And there is nothing like unto Him. He is immaterial. So the Quran said this. He's God, He's one, He's immaterial, He's eternal. He has no beginning, no end. He didn't give birth to anything. Nothing gave birth to Him. And He's immaterial. So using our aql in Arabic, our intellect, we come to the conclusion what the Quran concluded 1400 years ago. You may not be satisfied. Let me give you another argument. This argument is called the design argument. Okay? Now, when we ponder into the universe, brothers, sisters and friends, we see a particular order. We see a particular design. We see some form of natural laws. And to claim this was all just random is not very healthy. This is why Professor Roger Penrose, he says, to say that the universe is just here with all its intricate laws and the physics of the universe, it's not a very helpful way of looking at the universe. And I would agree with the professor. Do you know why? Because our very existence in the universe is on a knife edge. It is on a knife edge. Our very existence is based upon some fine-tuning, brothers and sisters. Some constants and values to exist within the universe that were fine-tuned, that if they were changed from a hair's breadth, we wouldn't be here today. There would be no life. Let me give you an example for some of this fine-tuning. Let's take the expansion rate of the universe. Physicists claim that the universe, when it started from singularity, started to expand at a particular rate. And some of these physicists say that if the expansion rate of the universe differed by 10 to the power of 4 to the minus 18 seconds, something like that, we would not have the universe today. We would not have the universe today. Also, physicists claim that the very emergence of the universe is based upon a certain phase space volume of possible universes. You don't have to know what this is, or what this even means. To be honest, I don't know what it means, okay? But let's ask the question, what is this volume? And this volume is 1 over 10 times 10 to the power of 123. Let your mind reel over that number for a bit. Now you may think, well, I don't know what that means. Do you know what it means? It's equivalent of me being a dartsman. I'm a dartsman, yeah? Without the big belly, okay? Well, bigger belly then. Yeah? I'm a dartsman, and I have to hit the center of a proton. Who knows what a proton is? For 100 points. What's a proton?
It's one of these subatomic particles.
It's a subatomic particle. I have to hit the center of a proton when the universe is my dartboard. Think about that. When the whole universe is my dartboard. So in reality, there's 3 possible explanations for this. Think about this. There's all this fine-tuning, and this fine-tuning doesn't just stop there. There's the gravitational constant, there's Planck's constant, there's all these values and constants in the universe that if they were changed by a hair's breadth, we wouldn't have the universe today. We wouldn't have a life-permitting universe today. Just imagine it in the following way. Say you have a big ruler from one end of the universe to another end of the universe, and you have a single point called the gravitational constant. Then you have another ruler from one end of the universe to another end of the universe, and there's a point here called another constant. And you have all these rulers at certain different points, and they're all interrelated together. And if you move them by a hair's breadth, we will not have a life-permitting universe today. So we need to question this. And there's 3 possible answers. The first one is just physical law. It's just there, it's just necessary. The second one is chance. And the third one is design. So there's 3. Physical law is just there, it's necessary. 2, it's just by chance. And 3, it must have been designed. There is a cosmic designer. Well, let's think about this. Let's take these into consideration. Number 1, can it just be there, just necessary? Of course it can't. Because if it was just necessary, we wouldn't be questioning it. We wouldn't be questioning the fact that why is it the way that it is? Also, if it was just necessary, it would mean that there could never be another universe. There could never be another universe that did not permit life. Or there could never be another universe that permitted life in the same way. It's just there. But we know from physicists that there could have been any number of universes with any number of physical constants and values that could have had a universe that didn't have existence, didn't have life itself. So we know it can't just be there. Well, let's take the second option, chance. Well, I would argue this is the atheist mantra. If there's a little bit of a chance, therefore we could squeeze God out of the picture. Squeeze the designer out of the picture. And I think sometimes, especially when you have the popular culture figures figures like Richard Dawkins and others, it is slightly intellectual dishonesty, okay? You just take this into consideration. The chances here are so improbable that our minds are reeling. They're so improbable that no one would take them as a basis for a rational discussion. Well, then they claim it still could be chance. Well, if that's the case, do we act like this in our day-to-day lives? Imagine spending all your life's earnings on the most improbable stock and share scenario with regards to bonds. I'm not an economist, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think you're getting the gist here, yeah? Imagine the most improbable scenario, and you put all your life savings. Would you do such a thing? Of course you wouldn't do such a thing. Well, what if, for example, a 747 jet appeared on your driveway overnight? What would you say? It would just appear there by chance? What about a great elephant just sleeping in your back garden? Chance? Is that how we do things as human beings? Is that how we think? Is that rational thinking? No, of course not. Well, they may claim, well, it's still by chance. Okay, let's take that into consideration. It's still by chance. Well, there's a problem here. We can't have a conversation anymore. Because if you claim everything is by chance, and therefore you can't explain anything. Because I could say, for example, that my mum is not my mother anymore. I refuse that my mother's my mother. She's actually an alien that was born on Venus, and she flew here on a feather. And the atheist may say to me, well, you're crazy, Mr. Tzortzis. And then I would reply, but there's a chance. Or for instance, I could claim that some of my dandruff is as a result, not as a result of some kind of skin condition, but rather it's the result of a South African parrot that flew on a cloud and did a poo. And that cloud somehow travelled journeys of miles to Britain, in London, and I walk out the door in my home, and the cloud somehow flakes some of that poo on my shoulders. You're crazy, Mr. Hunter Tzortzis. I know, but there's a chance. Do you see the point here? It's counter discourse. We can't have a discussion anymore. There's no conversation. If we're always going to claim things, it's just by chance. Why did you get a D in your essay? Mom, it was chance. Dad, it was just chance. Somebody gonna get hurt real bad. Okay, we've all seen it on YouTube. So, that's the reality, guys. But then I would even say now, for those who want to get a bit more deep into the subject, it's not just about chance. It's something called specified probability. And specified probability is when you have a huge chance and it has to conform to an independent pattern. For example, say we have a monkey on the typewriter. It's typing away continuously over 24 hours. And then you come into the morning and you see it sleeping on the floor and you see it printed out on a piece of paper. What do you see printed out? I'm gonna make a change for once in my life. A very bad rendition of Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson. Okay? The whole song. What would you think? Would you think, yeah, the monkey really did do that? The best explanation is that surely someone from the Islamic society came in the middle of the night, sedated the monkey, and typed out his favorite song. That's the most best explanation, because you can't take any other explanation, because the chances of the monkey are so high. And not only that, it conforms to independent pattern of the English grammar. Not only of the English grammar, but of a Michael Jackson song. Well, they may still think it's chance. But what can you do with these people? What I would say is, taking the chance hypothesis is denying the existence of the universe itself. Statisticians and mathematicians, they did a study on assuming there is a monkey on a keyboard, typing at every possible moment. And they said, do you know how long it would take the monkey to type to be or not to be from Hamlet's play? Shakespeare, or Sheikh Zabur for the Muslims, yeah? Do you know how long it would take? Give me some guesses. 100 years? Anyone know? Give me a guess. 5 hours. But do you know how long it would take? It would take, statistically, 28 billion years. How old is the universe? 14 billion years. Taking the chance hypothesis is equivalent of denying the very existence of the universe in the first place. So we know there are no good reasons to take the chance hypothesis. None at all. So what does that leave us? There's an inference to the best explanation. It can't be just there, physical law. It can't be chance, therefore it must be design. So we've got good reasons to believe in a creator, in a designer, using these two arguments, brothers and sisters and friends. I'm going to talk about the contentions, the responses from scientific, atheist, philosophical communities, and so we can have a more of a nuanced discussion, more of a detailed discussion. But let me go now to justify revelation. See, the unique thing about the Islamic tradition is that it doesn't say to you, believe because I said so. From that perspective. It doesn't say just believe. Just have faith. You know, I was talking to one of my Christian friends the other day, and he said the reason the Bible is a miracle, it was from God, is because in Timothy it says the people who wrote this are inspired. And I said, well, how do you know? Because God said so. Well, how do you know God said so? Because Timothy said they're inspired. I said, well, how do you know they're inspired? Oh, because God said so. Well, how do you know? Because they're inspired. Well, it's like you're in a circus, right? It's a dizzy argument. It's a logical fallacy. It's a circular argument. I'm not saying all Christians hold this view, but some do. Now, the unique thing about the Islamic tradition, about the Quran itself, if anyone picks it up, they would conclude, even if they hate the book, is that it's very intrusive. It wants to intrude here. It wants to intrude in the intellect of man. It wants to intrude in his inner dimensions. It wants to positively engage with the human being. And how does it do this? It asks you questions. It asks you questions. أَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Where are you going? Where are you going, people? Running around, being slaves to the system, get married, have kids, then die, worms meet, worm buffet. How it ends up being worm buffet, right? Where are you guys going? What's the reality of your true existence? Also, the Quran says, do you not reflect within yourself? Do you not reflect within yourself? Who are you? You don't even know who you are. That's what the Quran is saying to us. Are you just a product of society? Are you a product of your parents? Are you a product of your DNA? Are you a product of Britain? Who are you? Who really are you? If you agree that you are a product of all these social biological processes, then you're a robot. Congratulations. Because someone types in the social biological code and you just act in accordance. But are we really that? Surely we'll deny this and say there is a me. There is a voice within the many voices in my mind. And this is what the Quran actually says. It actually addresses society and says, are you just going to follow your forefathers? The people before you, the system, the reference point you have chosen, your DNA, the social processes, social pressure. Are you just going to follow these things? Even if what they're based on is actually wrong? This is profound what the Quran does. It makes you think about your own self and about reality. As the Quran says, reflect on the universe. It uses the word يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, which means for those who reflect. And the root word of this word actually means not just to reflect like a desert romantic touching the sand and looking at the stars with a shisha pipe. Yeah? No, that's not the reality. It means the thing that you're reflecting upon, you must scratch the surface. What does it really mean? What is reality? What are the implications of the thing that I'm reflecting upon? This is what the Quran says. The Quran is indicating to us that we shouldn't just be, desert romantics. However, the Quran goes even much further than this. It challenges mankind with regards to its authorship. As the Quran says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِّثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. And if you are in doubt, talking to everybody, the scientists, the humanists, the agnostics, the religious people, the Muslims, yourselves. If you're in doubt about this book, which we have sent down to our servant, referring to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then bring one chapter like it and call on your witnesses and supporters besides God, if you truthfully are the ones who believe that they're on the truth. It's a challenge here, a falsification test. What other religious book does this? And we can conclude that the Quran, when we really analyze it, has certain signs within it that indicate it's from the divine. Why? Because when we look at these signs, we can't find a naturalistic explanation. When we go to the nature of these particular signs, history, science, biology, sociology, we know at that time we're grasping at intellectual straws. We can't find a natural explanation. And in absence of a natural explanation, it indicates there's a supernatural explanation, especially if we've exhausted all natural explanations. Let me give you some examples for this. One of the examples I'm going to give you is a historical example. Now, the Quran mentions two different titles for the leader of the Egyptians. For example, in the chapter Yusuf, in chapter 12 of the Quran, it says that the leader of the Egyptians is called Malik, the king, Al-Malik. And at the time of Moses, alayhi salam, he's called Pharaoh, in Arabic, Fir'aun. Now, why such a minute historical change? Why such a minute detail? What's so important about calling these two different leaders different titles at specific times? Well, the reality is that at the time of Joseph, they were called Malik, Al-Malik, the king. And at the time of Moses, it was called Pharaoh. But the reality is that no historical document at that time, the Bible, the Torah, anything, even in poetry, never ever mentioned the leader of the Egyptians as Malik. It was always Pharaoh, Fir'aun. So where did the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, get this knowledge? It was absent at that time. Hieroglyphics was a dead language. The Rosetta Stone came way after. So where did he get this information? He just guessed it, took it from thin air, came out of the blue, came from left field? No. So when we go to the nature of historical knowledge at the time, it's absent. So it's a sign to the divine. And if you go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, you'll be able to understand what we're talking about here, the difference between the titles of the leader of the Egyptians at these two specific periods. So there's a historical part. Then we have a scientific, natural phenomena evidence. For instance, the Quran has around 1,000 verses indicating natural phenomena. The stars, the moon, the universe, the cosmos. But it also mentions about mountains. And it says in various places that mountains have pegs. They've been embedded, pegged almost. They have peg-like structures, stake-like structures in the earth. And this root, or this peg, if you like, is 5 to 15 times the original size of the mountain. The Quran mentions this. And the Quran also says, so the earth doesn't move underneath them. The function of this root or peg, for instance, is to prevent the earth moving under the mountain, which is called isostasy in geology. If you read the works of Dr. Frank Press, his book called Earth, you would see what I'm talking about. Now, how could the Quran even mention this? How could the Prophet mention this? It's an impossibility, because the nature of scientific knowledge at the time was so primitive, they believed that mountains were keeping the sky up. That was the reality of scientific knowledge at the time. Was this just a guess? Such a minute detail? Or how important is it to really know that mountains have pegs? Is it significant to the message of Islam? So such a minute detail. Amongst all these minute details, it indicates that the Quran must come from a supernatural source, because when we go to nature and we exhaust all naturalistic explanation, we don't have explanations anymore. I've got about 5 minutes left. Let's now talk about prophethood. Now, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, and he claimed that he was the final messenger. So, we need to apply some rational thinking and a rational approach to his claim. Well, he was either a liar, he was deluded, or he was speaking the truth. Liar, deluded, or speaking the truth. Well, let's see, just by using his life and the history of his life, could he be a liar? Well, let's think about this. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was boycotted from his favorite city. His wife passed away. His uncle passed away. He was stoned in a city just by calling people to the message of Tawheed. Tawheed in Arabic essentially means the oneness of God. Monotheism. That's all he was calling people to. Worship the one true God. That was it. Simple as that. And he was stoned. Many say he was stoned by children, where the blood was running down his legs, that his sandals were stuck to the sand. And he was so dedicated to his message that a Christian found him and gave him some water and grapes. And what did the Prophet do? He gave that Christian the same message, worship one true God. He didn't say, yes, make me feel better, I'm really tired, I've been stoned for hours maybe. He gave that message. Also, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was offered women, riches and power. Many of the leaders at the time of the Quraysh, the Arab leadership, they would say, have power this year, give us power the next year, we alternate power. You want women? We give you women. You want money? We give you money. You want gold? We give you more gold. You want power? We give you power. He said, no. You just have to accept the message that there's one true God. That's the reality. But he sacrificed everything. He died with nothing. All for this message. Is this the psychological profile of a liar? Furthermore, in his battles when he was defending Islam and its people, and I believe it was in the Battle of Hunayn, he was on his own with thousands of soldiers. And what did he say? What did he say? He said, I am the messenger of God and I am not a liar. That's what he said. Is this a psychological profile of a liar? To sacrifice his life, to be so brave on the battlefield? Well, he can't be. See, to claim he's a liar, the equivalent to claim that your mother is not your mother. That's the reality, people. From this perspective. So what do we say? Maybe he was deluded. Maybe he was crazy. But we know he couldn't have been crazy because his teachings have lasted 14 centuries. Take his teachings of economics, for example. The economic theory of Islam is a stable economic theory. The president of Ireland, when they were suffering this huge problem with regards to their finances, the credit crunch, the financial destruction, what did he say? He said, if we had the Islamic economic model, we would never have this problem. Because Islam is based on a stable economy. It's not based on speculation. Islam is based on, for instance, its monetary system is based on the gold and silver. It's pegged on something valuable. It's not free-floating. We know the geopolitical model of Islam is not based on there's too many needs, not enough resources, so we have to all compete with each other. No! The Prophet said in the hadith, which should be found in the books of Tirmidhi, he said that the son of Adam, the human being, all he needs is food, shelter and clothing. He defined our limited needs for us. So that creates a philosophy of distribution and not one of excessive competition. And we go on and on in the Q&A session about the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But just using this as an example, this is the product of a deluded man. So he can't be a liar, he can't be deluded. Then he must be speaking the truth. So what we've done here, we've given good reasons to believe in the Islamic worldview because we've given good reasons for the intellectual pillars of Islam, which is the existence of God, revelation, and the truthfulness of the Prophet's claim to prophethood. Now, you may think this is very abstract, very rational. How does it make sense to me? Well, it makes sense to you because as human beings, brothers, sisters, and friends, we all have questions. We all want questions that to be answered. For instance, we did a survey, and the conclusion, this was done for non-Muslims, it was a non-Muslim survey, and British non-Muslim society said that the most important questions to them were the following. What meaning do I have in life? Can I be the best person I can be? And do I know who I am? These were profound existential questions. And it's so true. If you follow the atheist paradigm, atheist thinking, then we're slightly in trouble. Just from a who am I perspective. Because in an atheist worldview, there is no ultimate value. There's value, because we give things value, but there's no underlying value to things. Because our ends are the same. What difference does it make if I lived as an angel and you all lived as devils? Does it make any difference? Really? If our ends are going to be worm buffet. If we're going to be worms meat, then it makes no difference, brothers and sisters and friends. Because there's no ultimate accountability. And therefore there's no ultimate value. What difference does it make if you're a politician working really hard for world peace? Or if you were the scientist trying to find the cure to cancer? You're going to die anyway. This is why many Christians in the torture camps of communist Russia, many of the Russian guards, they would say, we're all going to be worm buffet. We're just a rearrangement of molecules. We're going to be dust. We're getting away with this. Ha ha ha. That's the reality. So there's no ultimate value. What about ultimate purpose? There's actually no purpose for this. Bertrand Russell said, we are a cosmic orphan. Actually, he said, we're a miscarriage of nature. Others said, we're a cosmic orphan. Because we're the only being that says, why am I here? And there's no answer. We're a cosmic orphan, people. We've just been thrown into existence. And according to the atheist worldview, there's no purpose. But they would say, some atheist thinkers would say, well, from no purpose, you create purpose for yourself. But if you really think about this, that means, let's pretend to have purpose. That's what it really means. To give your own self an underlying purpose is saying, let's be delusional and pretend to have purpose. Think about this. What about morality? What about things being really good and really bad? Are they really objective? Is killing a 3-year-old an objectively, morally evil thing to do? What's the point of being a policeman? If we're going to uphold the law when law doesn't really mean anything, really. It's all subjective. In absence of God, that's the reality. Because there's no foundation for morality if you don't have God in the picture. There's no foundation because God is the only conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity. Now the atheists may say, well, there's evolution and social pressure. Well, let's take those into consideration. What does evolution say? Evolution says that we're just a byproduct of a lengthy biological process. Our morals have evolved like our unwanted hair and our teeth. Morality doesn't have any true deeper meaning. This is why a professor who was an atheist, Michael Rules, he says when you think love thy neighbor as thyself, you're thinking you're referring above and beyond yourself, but it has no true meaning. It's just a product of an evolutionary process. And if evolutionary processes are changing, therefore morals will change too. Well, let's take social pressure as an example. We come together as fellow human beings to understand what good is. Well, that's a very dangerous concept. Because that has justified killing 6 million Jews. It's justified 6 million Jews because there was a human consensus at the time in 1940s Germany that it was okay to annihilate these Jews. There was an evolutionary scientist from the London School of Economics today. Who read the paper today? Read it. He wrote a scientific paper arguing why black women are uglier than any other race. Yeah, that's the reality, people. And he justified Muslim genocide based on his studies, or he's an evolutionary psychologist. If that becomes social pressure, and we base our morals on social pressure, then we will consider black women as inferior, and we will think that it's okay to kill Muslims. If we follow social pressure, if that turned into social pressure. Where's the reference point? This is why why the foundation for marriage is for it to be objective. If you believe good to be really good and evil to be really evil, you need God in the picture. If you don't, just like what one of the Russian thinkers, Dostoevsky, he said, if you don't have God, then you can do anything. Because one, your moral values don't mean nothing, because they're not dependent on a transcendent source that transcends human subjectivity, and also, you don't have a moral giver, a duty giver, someone to give you morals and duties that transcends humans. So it actually makes sense very real in our lives, this whole concept of Islam or atheism, or even from this perspective, religion or atheism. I know there's many questions, and I want to address all the questions as much as we can. We have plenty of time, we have at least 45 minutes, so I'll end by saying that anything that I've said that's offensive or wrong has come from my ego. Anything that I've said that's good, we believe in Islam, has come from God, because God uses us as tools to manifest His mercy, His guidance and His love. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Let the questions begin.
Okay, the brother to our right.
Mashallah, the presentation was very good, and we could grasp some bits and bobs from it. I have the question regarding the first bit you concluded, the time space. You say T0 singularity started, and why do you think it's a cause? You came with the conclusion with a cause, and I couldn't understand how the cause came from.
Okay, very simple. What we're saying is, statement number one, okay, premise number one. Whatever begins to exist is a cause, okay? This is an undeniable statement. No one can actually provide any evidence to its contrary. There is an undeniable statement that whatever begins to exist does have a cause. For example, a noise came from a cause. You yourself began to exist, came from resultant causes, etc., etc. Number two, the universe began to exist. There was t is equal to minus 0, so it began to exist. So what's the conclusion here? Therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, if you're asking, well, if it's before time, causality doesn't make sense outside of time. If that's what you're asking, causality doesn't make sense out of time, and that's not true. Who said causality is defined with time? The philosophers haven't even agreed to what causality is in the first place. So in absence of a consensus, we basically say causality is whatever brings an effect. And you can also have things, as an example in the real world, that do not require time as its definition. Let me give you an example. Please, sorry. Okay, so this guy has a spongy shoulder, yeah? And my middle finger is pressing his shoulder, right? And I'm going to press it. 1, 2, 3, press. 1, 2, 3, press. 1, 2, 3, press. You see that? What's happening?
Not much.
As I'm moving my middle finger, there's an indentation in his shoulder, right? Look. What's happening first though? The movement or the indentation?
Movement.
How do you know? Look. It's instantaneous. It's happening at the same time. But you know you need one before you have the other. But it's happening at the same time. So time is not needed to understand causality. Because it's happening at the same time. It's what philosophers call asymmetric causality. So time is not a requirement for causality. Did that answer your question, sir? Thank you.
Do you have any further questions? We'll go to the sister at the back.
What would you answer to the typical atheist statement that religion is the cause of all wars? What would you say?
Yeah, I'll agree. I'll agree. I mean, you know, sometimes as Muslims we say, oh, Islam is peace. Like, yeah, pieces of hand and pieces of head. It's alright. It's alright. But we have to obey the law. No, I'm only kidding. See, what we have to understand is Islam, I can't speak for other religions. I can't even speak for Islam, but the thing I'm going to say is, Islam itself is not a religion of anything. It's actually a religion of life. It's a way of life. So it talks about war. It talks about peace. If they incline to peace, you incline to peace. Yeah, do not transgress the boundaries. So we have rules and regulations for every aspect of life when it comes to foreign policy, economics, law, spirituality, for instance. But I think the difference between true Islamic war, if you want to call it that, is actually, it's a means for harmony and justice. Because the reality of life is what? That we have oppression, that we have dictatorship, that we have sometimes, there are obstacles that prevent peace. There are obstacles that prevent harmony. This is why you have a concept called liberal interventionism from the Western philosophers, that you want to intervene physically to create a peaceful environment. Islam had something very similar. But our case was very positive, because look into history. There were Jewish historians, like Zayn Zohar, he's a contemporary Jewish historian. He said thus, when the Muslims crossed the Straits of Gibraltar in the Iberian Peninsula, crossed them, yeah? They weren't carrying flowers and tickling people's toes, it was war. Yeah? When they crossed the Straits of Gibraltar, the Jews saw the Muslims as liberators from Christian persecution. There were German poets, and they used to write, I pray that a Turkish horse drinks from the river Rhine. And the reason they wrote this stuff, because they knew at that time, when Muslims had a particular power, they would use it in a divine way to create harmony and justice for people. And they wouldn't kill innocents like you see in today's terrorist activity. And we wouldn't even call it collateral damage. Create such a technical code term for the killing of innocents, do you see? So from that reality, historically, I would say in the absence of Islamic values and divine values, you have these disasters. But I also would say, sister, it's an outdated cliche. There has been more blood spilled in the name of non-religious ideology than a religious ideology. Count the numbers for yourself. Take the 20th century. The 20th and 21st century have been the most bloodiest centuries recorded. For example, Stalin killed 6 million Christians. We don't have memorial days for those Christians. We have 20 million people die in communist Russia. We have 60 million people dead under Mao. You have massacres under non-religious ideologies. This is the reality, people. What about the Iraq war that just went? 1.2 million people innocent, some people estimate. Under the banner of non-religious ideology. So we can say, yeah, it's all about religion, but let's think about it carefully. What do the facts state? The facts state that there's more blood being shed as a result of non-religious ideology, and that's just the reality. Now we may think, well, it's all the religious fanatics. Do you know why? Because that's the reality of the media. They propagate this in a very secular kind of way to show that it's religious crazy guys with the secular normal people. And that's the unfortunate social norm that has occurred in our society. It's just really unfortunate. But that's how I answer that question. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, that after all, it's human beings who create weapons. It's not the religion that says, go and create weapons, you know?
That's true, but don't forget people are driven by ideas. And you could have a sword, right? And you could cut a watermelon for everyone who's thirsty in the desert. Or you can start chopping heads. So you see, so the idea or the kind of driving force behind that would make you use that tool as a weapon, or a tool as to like actually feed human beings. That's right. But you have to understand that I don't want to show to people that Islam's a pacifist religion. It's just like turn the other cheek. You won't have any cheeks left if you turn the other cheek. Yeah? So the reality is that Islam sees human beings as human beings. And fighting is a human phenomenon. What Islam tells us, don't do it to oppress people. You do it to defend yourself. And it's even Article 51 of the UN Charter, it says every individual and collective has a right to defend themselves. So we have this concept. And also we have the concept of intervention. And that's a very theological concept. It doesn't exist today because we don't have a true Islamic state living today. If we did, there would be a concept of actually, maybe after diplomacy fails, solving the problem of some nations, if the power was there. And this is why the Quran says, what is the matter with you that you do not fight for those who are oppressed in the town? And the calling is saying, relieve us from this oppression. So, there are certain reasons and rules and regulations, but you obviously can't kill innocents. As the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught his companions known to do that. And we have a very famous speech from Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, which he was the right-hand man of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, when you go to the battlefield and you engage with the other societies, don't kill the monks, don't kill unarmed men, don't kill trees, don't kill innocents, don't kill babies, don't kill children, don't kill women. And all these type of things, do you see? Even in some of the schools of thought in Islam, in the Maliki school of thought, when the Prophet ﷺ said, do not kill innocent children, they even took it to mean, if a child was holding a gun that was loaded, ready to kill you, they wouldn't even kill that child. Which in Western law, you can, because the child is a combatant. But according to this particular school of thought in Islam, they would run away from that child because they didn't want to be accused by God, by Allah, of being someone who killed a child, you see. So we have our rules and regulations, and funny enough in history, the Islamic rules and regulations to war predated the Geneva Convention. And if anyone decides to go to any library and read this up, it's there for people to read. Not written by mad mullahs, but written by normal Western academics.
Do you have any further questions? Can we have the brother in front of you?
I was just with a friend in the library up there, and we kind of argued, and we came to a conclusion that our existence is based on God's test. So God's test on whether we should, pray and worship Him, or choose not to, because we have that free will. So I was questioning, what is the test, and why do earthquakes happen? Why do they happen, and what test does it purpose? Because under the assumption that earthquakes happen from the cause of God, what does it happen? I mean, if there was a God, then why would there be earthquakes? Why would people die? What test does it? What's the rationality behind that?
Okay. So that's a very interesting question. First and foremost, this goes under the banner of the problem of evil. Okay. Now the problem of evil states there's too much evil in the world. It's gratuitous. Lots of unnecessary suffering, like natural disasters. They seem to serve no purpose. God's supposed to be good. But if we look at this, He can't be good. Because there's all these natural disasters and evil in the world, right? Now, first and foremost, you could argue in the following way. First, it doesn't negate God's existence. Because this is logically posterior to the existence of God. Meaning, it comes after the existence of God. Even if you take it as an assumption, then you would say, well, in Islam, we don't believe God is just good. We just don't have that narrative. We have 99 names and attributes of God. And we believe God is good. He's the loving. Al-Wudud means the excessively loving. He has all these different names and attributes, and He's also the wise. So you can just simply undermine the whole argument by saying there's wisdom behind it. Now you may argue, I can't see the wisdom. So, that's arguing from ignorance. It's a logical fallacy. It's called argumentum ad ignoration. You can't argue from ignorance. If God is wise, and we know He's wise because His revelation said He's wise, and we're not following this blindly because we've got some good reason to believe in this revelation, then He's wise. So there is some wisdom behind it. Now you don't have to know the wisdom, and to be honest, you may never know the wisdom. Because if you knew all the wisdom behind everything God does, that would make you the same as God really, which would be a logical impossibility. Do you understand that? Well, why do you think it needs justification? That's the question.
Because I thought that the test for humanity is based on good and evil. So by imposing an earthquake, that's defeating the test of their work.
No, not really. Not really. I think, see, you describe tests as a very primitive way, theologically, if you want to put it that way. Yeah? Tests in Islam is not based on good and evil and choice. It's actually to do with calamity and fitna. That's why many of the ulama, many of the scholars in the past said, from looking at our tradition, the Quran and the prophetic teachings, that having patience, and when God says, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin, God is with the patient, it means you're patient at the time when calamity strikes, earthquake. Are you patient? When the guy slaps you in the face, because you're giving dawah, you're propagating Islam in Loughborough Square town or something, yeah? Do you fight back? Or do you hold the patience for the sake of God, not for the sake of your ego? Do you see? When your fellow human being swears at you, do you punch him in the face? Do you say, what's the matter with you, fool? Or do you say, no, I'm going to calm down because I know he's a human being and he might have a bad life and a bad day. I want to empathize with this human being. And do you just hold that down for the sake of God or for the sake of your ego? When you see the calamity strike in Japan, for example, what do? Start questioning God? Or do you actually use the God-given things to go and help those people? That's the reality. And what we have to understand is this, brothers and sisters and friends, that we believe God is the most wise and all-loving, and He's the most compassionate, all-loving. These people, regardless of what you think is happening to them, we know that mercy and justice will manifest itself. There will be no injustice happening to a human being in the big movie screen on the Day of Judgment. Yeah? When your whole life is a movie and showing in front of you what you did, yeah? There will be no injustice, not an atom's weight of injustice happening to anyone. So with regards to the test, every person's lifespan was sufficient for them to pass the test of life or not. But the question really is, أَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Where are you going? Does it really matter what happened to these people? We believe God is the most just and is the most loving. That's going to manifest itself on the Day of Judgment. Whatever happens to them. But what do you do? So the Quran is very existential that way. Very, what are you going to do about the situation kind of thing, right? So we do see these things as tests. We think everything is done by God, good and perceived evil. And all of these things are done by tests. So God tests us for who's the best in good deeds. Everything has a wisdom behind it. God is the most just, most loving, and those things will manifest themselves on the Day of Judgment. So from these concepts, it really deals with the idea of someone thinking this is unnecessary. Do you see? Because you think about it this way. Having the emotional subconscious reaction that is unnecessary may be a test for you. Do you see? Is that satisfactory?
Do you have any further questions? The brother.
I saw you last week.
Why do you think the atheist argument is so popular and seems to gain a lot of leverage and is popular in the minds of people?
You know, that's a very complex question, because first and foremost, and this is an unfortunate reality of us living in Britain, us Brits, we don't read much. The popular man, if you go to the Office of National Statistics, we read specific on like academic subjects less than 3 minutes a day. And that's like, you know, for some readers, it's like the introduction, or the preface, or the title even, yeah? So the point is that we don't read, we're not engaged in thinking. Because don't forget, what has society done for us? The iPhone, always listen to something else, we've got the games, computer games, entertainment, even the news has become infotainment. It's an information and entertainment at the same time. It's all clouding your minds. Everything is clouding our minds, so we don't have a chance to think. This is why the Quran is a very relevant book for the 21st century, because it tells you to think. It tells you to think. وَكَذَلِكَ نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And thus we've explained our signs in detail for those who reflect. When do we become people of reflection? That's the reality of human beings. We need to become people of reflection. And that's one of the main things, because people who claim to be academics and very clever get away with murder. Like Richard Dawkins, for God's sake. Like he would go on Channel 4 and bully 12-year-old girls. Why don't you believe in evolution? Believe in me. Yeah? That's the reality, people. And he gets away with it on Channel 4. Why? Why isn't there someone articulate there, having a discussion with him, representing another worldview? Why every time on the big questions, for example, you may have Richard Dawkins, and frankly, someone who's a very sincere Muslim, but his English is very bad, you know, and he can't say much. Why is that constructed that way? We need to facilitate fair dialogue. In De Montfort University, around the corner here, we had a debate, and Richard Dawkins was invited. He refused. Why? Why are these things happening? We need to have a frank discussion. And what we need to understand is also a political motive as well, because what happens is, we live in a secular society, and any ideology wants to promote and protect itself. How do you do that? By giving platform to people who are in line with your particular philosophy. But I think we need to change society together as human beings, and universities where it starts, we could have these discussions and these debates and dialogues. It's okay for me to disagree with you. Doesn't mean I hate you. Do you see the point? People think disagreement means there's going to be problems. No, I'd rather be consciously aware of why I hate you, rather than being ignorant and hate you. Do you see the point? I'd rather know why I don't like like what's about you based on knowledge than based on the absence of knowledge. Many people don't like Muslims is because they just don't know what Islam's about. You know, I think it was about 41% of people didn't even know who Allah was. They thought he was a prophet. Do you know that? And they thought he was like an angel. About 71% of people didn't know who the Prophet ﷺ was. It's your responsibility to do something. You don't expect people who weren't, historically, politically, we're an alien community. Many of us are not white, for example. We're not English indigenous. Obviously, we're Brits now, we're part of society, and we're going to be here, we're here to stay, we're part of the fabric, and we want to create a positive society for everybody. But if you see it from an indigenous Brit perspective, it's like, he's different from me. He acts different from me. That's why empathy is so important. We need to sit in people's shoes and walk 1 inch. If you could walk 1 inch in people's shoes, then you'll understand why people are like them. I understand the EDL. I truly do. I'm from Hackney in London, one of the worst boroughs in Europe, yeah? Proudly, yeah? And a lot of East Londoners, and I know working class people, their fathers worked, all they knew was work and pub and home, work, pub and home. That's the reality. They brought up in that environment. Then they see these people taking your jobs. They get in the university places. Things are changing rapidly. And these people probably have a bad kind of upbringing anyway, maybe, from a working class perspective, they have a good, positive engagement with their parents, some kind of psychodynamic issues there, and they want to express it in society and blame the alien, blame the colored guys, the Muslims, or whatever. It happens in society. And you know why that happens is because both communities are not talking to each other in a frank way. Because we always say we have this really liberal, stupid view. Talk about your commonalities. We're human beings, we're always going to join together on common things. But what about things that make us different? Why aren't we talking about these things? Why aren't we talking about these things? Because these things are the very things that create our fear and anxiety and all the problems. If you now make it human and relevant, then you can engage with the wider society. I think that's the question to do. What should we do in this situation? Inform, educate, have a discussion. Stop being apologetic all the time. No, we don't really believe in this. We don't believe in the harsh punishments in Islam. Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, but explain why they're there. What's our philosophy on crime? It's for deterrency. We don't want everyone's hand chopped off for God's sake. That's not the philosophy of Islam. Like for example, if you take Sharia law as an example, it's being caricatured. They made a Mickey Mouse cartoon of a legal model. Honestly, if we read law, the philosophy of law, if you go to like Ernest van der Arg, the late Fordham professor, you would see that he would even be a promoter of suitably harsh punishments, but based on values in society and based on strong criteria. Because if you would go to Fox News, Bill O'Reilly show, what a muppet! I swear, if you go to Fox News, type in Bill O'Reilly, this guy has lost the plot. Yeah? Go to Sky News even, go to BBC, and when they talk about the Sharia, it's such a caricature. And they make this cartoon, for example, that, the guy with the big beard's gone. The guy with the big beard, for example, is waiting outside Tesco's, and there's a niqabi burqa woman who's just looking for one little hole. Yeah? The eyes coming out like this. Yeah? And then she's like, sees the poor white geezer, 18-year-old geezer, he's very poor, hasn't had a job before, he's really hungry, really skinny, he's running to Tesco, and he's going to steal the cookies. And he steals the cookies, he runs out like this, and then the guy with the beard trips him up with his beard, and the woman with her eye and her burqa, she gets the sword from her cloak, gets his hand, goes, Allahu Akbar. That's the picture that's been portrayed of a legal model. That's the picture that's been portrayed of a detailed divine model that we believe is divine. We don't want people's hands cut off like that. We're not like that. Muslims are people of rahmah. Ibn Qayyim, the famous scholar, said, when you see mercy, you should see Islam. But what we're saying is, we want a society that has cohesive values. We want a society that prevents crime in the first place. Did we prevent the crime of the guy stealing the cookies? No, we didn't. First and foremost, he will never be punished in Islam because he's hungry. If you're hungry, you're never punished. Even the greedy guys, we facilitate greed in this society. Not just long ago, we had advertisements that had subliminal advertising to make people want to buy. Professor Coran from the University of Maryland says that greed is an essential feature of our economic system. the consumer bails out our society. Look out through this financial crisis. We have to be greedy to have an economic, productive capitalist model. That's just the reality, people. And we facilitate greed, so we're going to facilitate this type of crimes. If you're going to feed people that what defines you is bling bling and blah blah, then that's why you want to go and buy it. You want to get the next trainer. That's when you get guys in the ghetto. They have amazing trainers. They're from the ghetto. Come on, guys. Do you see the point? And in Islam, we want to prevent those things and create mechanisms to prevent the agitation, the over-agitation of these instincts. This is why Professor Clive Holland, he's a criminologist, he says, we always talk about the result of something. What about the underlying cause? What about the underlying cause? Why do 6-year-olds now, 6-year-old girls, are very conscious of the way they look? Who heard about the 8-year-old Botox story? That might be true, that might not be true. But if it's true, that's just crazy. We value women so much in society that we allow them to manipulate their lips. That's just wrong. That's just so wrong. And by the way, it happens to everybody. We all have this in our hearts, by the way. It's not just it's the other community thing. Muslims, it's human. Human beings have this thing, yeah? How many mirrors do we have in the house? You've probably got a mirror in your bag. Yeah? I'm not saying it's good to look nice and pretty and look good, but if it's over excessive, then it's a problem. It's taking society down to another dimension. So the point I'm trying to say is, the Islamic legal framework is quite nuanced. It talks about values, it talks about the conditions for crime. Do you know there are about 19 conditions for the punishment of theft? 19! It's almost impossible to get caught. What about the adulterer? You know what it's here? You guys stone women to death. Yeah? You guys stone each other. I mean, how many Muslims do you see with a spliff? Did you get the joke? Stone each other. So the point I'm trying to say is, look, even the Prophet, when someone came to him and said, I did such a bad deed outside of marriage, he said, go away, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. It shows that it's a deterrent effect. We want it to be a deterrent effect, not for it to be actualized all the time. This is why the conditions for adultery are virtually impossible. One of my scholars, he would discuss this with a non-Muslim and say, do you know the conditions for adultery? You have to do it in public. In public, the deed. Where the scholars say the ink pen goes into the ink bottle. Yeah? Do you get the gist? Good. So that's what happens. Yeah, that's what you have to see. And it has to be by 4 pious witnesses that have been proven to have a good track record of character. 4 pious witnesses. Now let me tell you something. That doesn't even happen in Soho. Those public acts in London, you don't even see them in Soho. And then you know what the non-Muslim guy said to my scholar? He said, well, if all those conditions are in place and they still get caught, then they deserve it. that's the reality, people. So this is the thing we need to understand. And this is not just a modernist view of crime and punishment in Islam. This was from 1400 years ago. Our medieval scholars were talking about this. Even Ibn Taymiyyah, one of the most aggressive scholars that some people claim he's aggressive, he would even say, if you did such an act, then don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Ask for forgiveness, God will forgive you, move on with your life. It's only when it's a public manifestation, when you have 4 pious witnesses. Even if they were to see that in their own home, an adulterous act in someone's home, there's no punishment. Do you know why? Because it's forbidden in Islam to look into someone's house. Spying and invading privacy is totally forbidden. Where some scholars say, do you have a right to poke someone's eye out if they checked your email? Who's read someone else's email over the shoulder in the computer? Yeah? But this is the values of Islam. So it's high conditions. The point is, to cut long story short, it's not a caricature like the way it's been portrayed, and that's the unfortunate reality. Yeah, that's it. That guy's been holding up for a long time.
Okay.
Comes to your question there. How do Muslims justify or carry out the act of stoning or when the conditions are so high, or like suicide bombings? I'm just saying, in Islam the conditions are completely different. And mullahs or people justify. How do they
Justify what? The adulterous act? Or?
Yeah, no, not the stoning, or like say, stoning, but like the Taliban.
Yeah, sure.
Stone to death, and you're saying, and I agree with you need 4 pious witnesses.
Yeah, but they know that too.
Yeah, so how did...
But they know that too. They know that.
What's the justification? That's what I can't...
What's the justification that you need 4 witnesses?
No, I'm talking about how do they justify it? You know?
No, but you're assuming that they didn't have the 4 witnesses. Don't forget, in all due respect, a lot of these things come from the media. The media says, okay, you understand this question better than me?
What he's asking is, why then do they do these things? Why then do suicide bombers carry out suicide bombings?
But how does that relate to adultery?
No, he's saying that, like for example in Afghanistan, the Taliban will stone women to death, perceptions of the Iran based on Iran, whatever. He's saying that how do they justify it based on what you're saying is that...
Oh, because there's no justice in the Muslim world, guys.
You're saying it's almost impossible to
Yeah.
get
Well,
the conditions right, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
But why is it...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, generally speaking, there's an absence of justice in the Muslim world. Unfortunately, we haven't followed our values, and we're not following our values. It's a shame. It's a huge shame. And I talk about anyone. Take the good, take the bad. For example, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, for example, is stealing the wealth of its people. I went to Umrah, a religious pilgrimage, and I saw it was specifically black people with no hands, they look deformed, begging for money. Where is their money? The Prophet told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whatever the Prophet says is wahi, it's revelation for us. He said that people are partners in 3 things: water, pastures, and fire, the natural resources. Saudi Arabia has billions of money of oil. They have petrol dollars. Why haven't they injected it back into the society? But they don't. They inject it back into the princes. There's one prince, he came to Norway. And he went, you know what he did in the Radisson Hotel? He asked him to repaint it and to change it and to break a wall down and give him money for it. When his people are begging on the streets and he's stealing the people's money. That's a shame. That's a crime. And we need to speak about this. Because the Quran tells us, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَعْمَرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let there rise amongst you a band of people that will call to the good, which means the whole of Islam. Ibn Kathir says the whole of Islam. They command the right and forbid the wrong. This is the Muslims. We're in this disaster. We don't command the good and we don't forbid the wrong things. And in our Muslim society, this is what's happening. And this means we need to account our governments here in this society too. For example, we have suffered excessive individualism in this society. If you read the Children's Society report that published in 2009, said that our children in Britain are suffering from so many social diseases because of this excessive individualism. We have this disease in our society, and what's in it for me? Very kind of individualistic kind of society we've turned into. And I would blame liberalism on this, social liberalism, because it overemphasizes on the individual, doesn't have a balance between individual rights and social rights. So there's whole different things that we can talk about. But we as Muslims, specifically our tradition tells us, command the good and forbid the evil. Be just, even if it's against yourself, the Quran says. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. Oh, you who believe, كُنُوا قَوَّمِينَ لِلَّهِ شُهَدَاءَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. Oh, you who believe, be steadfast witnesses in God for justice, and don't let the hatred of others make you swerve from justice. Do not let the hatred of others make you swerve from justice. Be just, that's closer to your duty. This is what Islam tells us. But when we go to the Muslim world, there is no justice. Why? People call it Islamic states. The revolutions in the Arab world were proof that there weren't Islamic states. There were dictatorships, tyrannical rulers. And by the way, don't be misled by Mr. Smiley, Obama, when he was saying his Middle East speech. Honestly, don't be swayed by his rhetoric. Don't be swayed by his eloquence, because they were waiting for the last minute. They were still supporting Mubarak in Egypt until the last minute, and they switched sides. Because he was a huge American supporter, supporting American interests. And that's a shame. Don't be swayed by Mubarak when he's talking about justice and liberalization of economies by supporting Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh. She's a tyrant. My friend was tortured in Bangladesh. The British government, what the British government did, took him out of there. He was tortured for a year and a half. His shoulders were drilled, his knees were drilled, his livers were failing, because of this type of government, because it's tyrannical. Mubarak, they used to torture the political prisoners. They used to electrocute men's testicles. That's the reality, people. What about the money, the aid that's given to Uzbekistan? Islam Karimov, he bores his political opponents to death, injects them with the AIDS virus. Is that a good thing to do? You know, we need to account. We need justice, and that's the reality. And Muslims should be people of justice. Allah says in the Quran, "Inna Allah yuhibbul muqsitin." Allah loves the just. Yeah, I don't know how this is related to atheism and Islam, but what I'm trying to say is that we need to show our values. And these values are common to the wider British society. What's kind of the common culture thing? Fair play, mate. Fair play. We have this innate concept of justice. Let's link with other people. And don't think you can't link with other people. The Quran says, vie in virtue. Qurtubi, in his tafsir, in his explanation of this verse, come together in good, he even said with the polytheists, even with the mushriks, even with those who believe in many gods, which is a fundamental sin in Islam, even join with them for good action. Do you see? So we need to wake up and be people of change. Because God says, "Inna Allah la yughayyiru." Indeed, God does not change the state of a people unless they change what's within themselves. That's the reality. And we need to, be positive beacons to the wider society too. Yeah. There's a lady with a chain on her arm.
Can I just ask you what time your train is?
Yeah, we got 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes.
Okay, one more question, inshallah. The sister in the middle now.
Actually, brother, if you don't...
Sorry, no, the sister there. The sister here.
Yeah, the Quran does says that everyone should follow Islam. I mean, every religion does that. But if you mean forcefully, no, of course not. The Quran says there is no compulsion in the religion. This is the reality. And if you see, for example, look at India today. India was governed by Muslims for a huge period of time. You still have temples, you still have the Hindus. They weren't forced to convert to their religion. You have Coptic Christians in North Africa, in Egypt. This is testimony to show that Muslims never forced anyone to follow the religion. And if any Muslim does force someone, the announcement of that they're Muslim is invalid anyway. The scholars will even consider them a Muslim if you're forced to become a Muslim. So the Quran clearly says in the 2nd chapter, there is no compulsion in religion. There is no compulsion in religion. It's a clear-cut statement. Now, sometimes if you see historical problems, then those are historical problems based on the weaknesses of human nature. But generally, you cannot force anyone to adopt a certain position. The only force you have is an intellectual force in the Quran. It wants to discuss and intrude with your mind. It wants to show to you there are good reasons to believe in this particular book. Just read the book for yourself. I'm surprised I don't even have this book here. I mean, we should have it here. Yeah? Read the Quran with an open mind, and you see it's talking to you straight. It's a dynamic discourse that really intrudes in your mind. It talks to you about things like, why are you here? Thinking about your presence. What does it mean to be a human being? Just take that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you don't want to, I'd just like to add something about the stoning.
Yeah.
What you didn't mention is that a lot of people in this world call themselves Muslims, and they actually don't know about the Islamic rules. For example, where my background is, in that country, that happens a lot. They stone people, especially women. And if you talk to them, they don't even know the 5 pillars of Islam.
Yeah.
They can't even, they're not, they're illiterate.
Yeah.
They can't even read the Quran. And they've been doing things that their parents told them and their grandparents
Yeah.
told them.
Well, this is exactly the Quran says for us not to do. Don't follow your forefathers blindly. Do not follow what people tell you blindly. Also, you would be so surprised in areas in Pakistan, if a woman was adulterous or a man was adulterous and they had a child, do you know what some mullahs would do? They would want to stone the baby. This is not Islam. This is craziness. Now don't get me wrong, this is very minority, but it shows, you know who's at fault? It's not just the Muslims, it's the colonial empire. Because when the colonialists came, they wanted to remove Islam as a reference point from society. When they came to India and Bangladesh, they wanted to cut the reference point of Islam. They wanted the reference point to be like the colonial British penal code. If you go to the Bangladesh constitution, a lot of its legal law, philosophy, if you read it, is based on old British law. It's not Islamic in any shape or form. So you're right, sister. The point is we need to re-educate ourselves, educate others. It's a long process. But as one of the famous Chinese Confucius and Buddhist guys said, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a simple step. So we need to take that first step. And this reminds me of a beautiful hadith, a beautiful prophetic tradition of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, if you walk to God, God will come running. And you know, that is in spiritual matters, in hearty matters. It's also hopefully in matters of society. So we know we do His work, then He just adds the rest of it for things to change. So I hope, brothers and sisters and friends, that this has been enough for you to think about Islam in a different way. I hope it's been enough for you to start thinking and start just talking to each other. I think it's one of the most important things that we could all do. Thank you very much for listening.